Education Secretary and nominee Betsy Devos is not having a good year so far. First, we had her nomination hearings, and those were an embarrassing debacle from beginning to end. And a lot of senators, mostly on the left, a little bit on the right, had some good questions that made clear how ill-prepared she is for the position. A little bit that came out of those hearings. Devos was not aware of a federal law protecting the rights of students with disabilities, did not appear to understand a question about measuring school quality, and suggested that schools needed guns to protect students from grizzly bears. The Wyoming school she was referring to bans guns from its school campuses and instead uses a fence to keep bears away from students. So that's good. Maybe she should have advocated for more fences in schools. She also refused to say that she would enforce a 2011 guidance that uses a preponderance of evidence standard in investigations of campus sexual assault, which is the standard that activists for more investigation and accountability for sexual assault on campus want to be instituted. And as a result of all of this, last week, teachers and their allies protested against her nomination by gathering in front of schools in over 200 cities. And by the way, I only just found out about that today. So again, the media sucks. But that is a great organized opposition to her that we haven't really seen with a lot of the other nominees, even the other ones who are least prepared for their position. But coming out of all of that, the popular opposition and her poor performance, we now find out that the Democrats are going to oppose her nomination, and you're going to see that in this video.
She's someone that there's not going to be one Democratic vote for her, and we're trying to find Republicans who will vote against her because she's an ideologue who knows next to nothing about education policy, as we demonstrated, or she demonstrated really, in her confirmation hearing. Price, he's unacceptable. I mean, there's going to be a lot of these nominees who we're going to do everything we can to defeat. As you know, these nominees need 51 votes, and we have 48. So we need some Republicans to defeat somebody. But you will see Pruitt, you'll see a number of these nominees who will, virtually all of us will oppose them. And I'm sure the same. I'm sure it's true with DeVos. I'll bet you it's true with Price.
So that's good to hear, at least on this nominee, not on some of the previous ones. There is going to be opposition. It might not be enough, but what do you think about the likelihood that she will be barred from taking over the Department of Education?
There's nothing to make you think that it's likely because of the numbers. But if any of them, going in, I thought there was going to be, they would have one or two that wouldn't make the cut because it was Trump, right? Because they would, even Republicans would come out. This one seems like it would be one on qualification that they might do that. The problem that you have is a problem we talk about here all the time, which is money in politics. That on the panel that is considering her nomination sit at least 4 Republican senators that she's been wildly generous with in campaign finance and in campaign donations. So you have this huge problem.
How is that
with
possible?
Well, it's possible, but you should not be allowed to nominate someone such as this, or people who want to get into government should not be giving money that way, or they should be giving it to both sides if that's what they want to do.
Or if you've been given donations by a nominee, you should recuse yourself from their vote.
Well, that's the last one. You should not be able to vote on this nominee if they've been giving you money. It's so simple to do that, right? Yeah. Susan Collins of Maine came out and she said who she is supporting. Absolutely. It's not a stellar list of people. She's a Republican from Maine. You're not going to agree with a lot of them. Omitted from that was Betsy DeVos' name. She didn't say she was going to vote against her, but was omitted from that list. That's just one.
Yeah, I read a couple of her quotes.
And so, does she bring Lisa Murkowski along? Does she bring others along? Doubtfully. I mean, I don't see the out here for them. And DeVos is the most, the most reprehensible. I don't know if she's the most reprehensible. She's among the 15 most reprehensible nominees that he's put before the court. Yeah. I spoke today for about 71 seconds to a former U.S. senator who was getting on a plane allegedly, or just sitting at home and didn't want to talk to me. But we spoke. He was very. The question I had was, why are Democrats, he's a Democrat, why are Democrats going along with these nominees?
This is the question everyone wants to know,
A lot of people want to
Michael.
know. And you see Franken reacting to it now because they are getting flack for it. He gave a good answer. I mean, it's not an answer I'd necessarily like, one that you probably like less, but he said, we know in most cases the tradition of approving the nominees of a president generally means that you are going to get somebody like that person if you overturn them in reaction. So let's say you don't get Devos. You might get someone like Devos. I don't know if there are that many people that are like Devos in that way. But if you don't get a lot of these people, let's say it's Pruitt, a little bit more of I guess a textbook. You're going to get somebody else come in who's just like Pruitt.
Yeah. Which is
so,
what Elizabeth Warren largely said about Ben Carson.
About Ben Carson. So that's what the Democrats do. That's what Republicans do often with Democratic nominees as well. I don't remember the last overturned cabinet nominee. Justice is sure, John Tower.
Who was, him, drinking, right?
For drinking, right? And that was something, and he was a colleague of the senator, so that was even worse. It was womanizing, it was drinking. So maybe there's something that jumps out that's horrible, but look at what this president did and what people allowed him to do. I think that. So he said, this senator said to me, it's as simple as that. We're not going to, let's not waste our time on these people. Let's spend our time and use whatever capital, I'm not saying.
No, I'm not, I know, you're saying what he said.
I'm saying what he said. Let's use our capital to stop what they want to do later on and to highlight what they want to do and stand in the way of that. This senator said he thinks Republicans will be easier to bring along, some Republicans, on that part of it, in some cases, not across the board at all, but in some cases that are important as this administration moves along.
Yeah.
That's the philosophy that they use.
And so they think that if they voted against the nominees, that would poison the well of the Republicans coming along with them later?
Well, two-part. One, that it would potentially poison the well, but also that it wouldn't actually get them anything better.
Right. But
because they can't nominate anyone.
But so what my point is
why not lose 51-48 each time?
Yes, so then you're on
I agree.
record, and now what you're doing is you're handing a mini victory to Trump, and now Trump can say later on, but you guys voted for these people. You all voted to confirm this. Now you're going to say he's not a good person because of this. You knew about that when you confirmed him.
Yeah.
How could you possibly be upset? So that's why it's so. There doesn't seem to be a downside. So if you're going to be the resistance and you're going to go along with all his cabinet picks, it's normalizing Trump's governing style, and it doesn't get you any goodwill with the Republicans. And by the way, what about making them pay the price for screwing over Barack Obama's Supreme Court pick for an entire year? There was zero price to pay for that. Barack Obama didn't make them pay a price for that, and the Senate Democrats aren't making them pay a price. There is no price to pay. They're still being pragmatic. Those same people who wouldn't allow Barack Obama to rightfully appoint a Supreme Court justice, they are now getting no price. Go ahead.
No, it's very angry. I was going to ask you, what price would you, first of all, the question you asked, right, is why not lose 51-40? That was my next question, but Senator the plane was taking off, right? But I mean, he was very kind, but I sort of didn't believe he was getting on a plane or sitting on a plane. It didn't have that kind of ambient plane noise, but he was really generous in talking, and I found it very interesting. What I was able to infer, though, was that the answer is yes, that you still save political capital, you do the right thing, quote unquote, what has been tradition, and the Senate is addicted to tradition. You do that for a moment, and then you fight later. The question is, they don't fight, right? I mean, where's the fight going to happen? Maybe this time, because of Trump, you're going to have Republicans who, when it comes to legislation, you're going to have people who want to oppose him, for a while within his own party, the first 100 days, all of that.
Someone strong like Marco Rubio.
But your question is great. Somebody strong like Marco Rubio. But did you see the guy holding a spine?
Yes,
that was so great,
that was
right?
fantastic.
What you said is true, though. And what could they have done about where's the retribution for the Supreme Court justice nominee? Like, how do they do that? Could they have done that yet? What could Obama have done then? What could he do? What could be done now? I wanted.
We'll see on Thursday when
he
announces his
when he
Supreme Court
announces it.
pick.
I know. That's what I mean. I wanted to know what that was, right?
Yeah.
Because I couldn't come up with it, and I get really frustrated when I don't have an opinion about what to do. But I didn't know what the president could do. I didn't know what the Congress could do. It was lame duck. That stuff never happens in practical terms. But I was so angry about it, and I still am.
Well, what other people have told me who are, academics, that...
what are you trying to say about me?
But is that Barack Obama never really understood the power of the bully pulpit. He never used it. He never hammered one idea, and he didn't make the Republicans. Not only did they not pay a price for opposing everything he tried to do since 2010, but they paid no price at the bully pulpit. So he didn't move people. He didn't make it an issue. He didn't make them answer for it constantly. They didn't have to pay a political price. There was no price to pay. And that's his job. You have to use the bully pulpit to make people pay political prices. That's really, the big thing that the president has.
I think you're right, but I think the numbers are the thing that they had. And this particular, in general, absolutely. I think Rahm Emanuel, being his chief of staff from the beginning, was the worst thing that Barack Obama did in office from the very beginning, because he took somebody who was toxic to the Hill immediately and strained relations, right? Because people just didn't like
we're going to work
when his strategy is we're going to work together. So Rahm Emanuel was a mistake in my opinion from the beginning. But I don't, and I agree with what you're saying. But how? Like, what could he have done? I still don't know what it is. And you're not an academic, so I don't know why I'm asking.
Look, I do think we're going to see, hopefully, in the coming weeks when he nominates someone to the Supreme Court who, I mean, if the experience we've had so far this month is anything to go on, God knows where he's going to find this person or what they're going to believe, and it's going to be far more consequential, because whereas the heads of these departments are going to be wrecking our country for 4 years or so, unless some of them burn out or quit or whatever, whoever ends up on the Supreme Court could be there for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, theoretically. And so that's even more important. I agree with Elizabeth Warren. If you got rid of Ben Carson, you wouldn't get anyone better. That doesn't mean you shouldn't still vote against them.
I agree.
Especially when Ben Carson made clear that he is willing to give money to Donald Trump's family to build housing or whatever. And I read this editorial this morning on Vox from Matthew Iglesias, and he was saying, we're not giving the Democrats enough credit for the opposition that they are throwing up. And he pointed out differences between what's happening now and what happened under Barack Obama when he first came into office. He pointed out that then the Republicans actually largely voted unanimously to support Barack Obama's cabinet nominees. But that's because he was choosing PhDs, people with experience in the field, people who are not ideologically chosen because they're at 180 with the goal of that department. Rex Tillerson has no experience in diplomacy and appears to have been put in to get that $500 billion deal with Russia. Betsy DeVos wants to destroy public education. Ben Carson is going to hand off money to Donald Trump. Mateo said that Jesus Christ is the only solution for the problems of the world. These are people who are going to seriously imperil our country and its citizens. And like you said earlier, at the very least, if you vote against them, when they do these things, you can say, I was against this person from the start. If you vote for them now, then you are signing on for the terrible decisions that they make later on.
So, and let me just make one thing about Elizabeth Warren with Ben Carson. So her theory on voting for him, as you stated, was that she's afraid that she's going to get something worse than Ben Carson. So I'll go with you. No, you oppose it. If something worse comes, you oppose that too. And she referred to Ben Carson's statements, what he said about, gay people and transgendered and all the horrible things he said, that women who have abortions are worse than slave owners, stuff like all that stuff he said, right? She said, I've disagreed with his previous statements. No, you don't disagree with them. You condemn them.
Yeah.
You don't disagree with them. So this is, again, the weak, with spineless Democrats. And now, so I might get something worse. So I'm afraid of what Donald Trump might do later, so I'm going to go along with him now. They just screwed you over for a year and wouldn't give you a Supreme Court justice. And you can't even stand up against Ben Carson. What do you got, a sponge in your brain?
You can't stand up against him. He can't even stand up. And you need context. You disagree
he opposed
with
his own nomination.
Yes, exactly, preemptively. But anyway, look, for Betsy DeVos, the committee is scheduled to vote on her nomination on Tuesday, January 31st, which is important because, as Al Franken pointed out, they are looking for 2 or 3, depending on if the one that we think might theoretically go against her will. And so if you could bring up this graphic, supposedly the Democrats are all opposed, where there are the Republicans who are also going to be voting. But if you live in one of those states, or even if you don't, feel free to put as much pressure as you can on those senators to try to make clear that there will be a price to pay, if not from Senate, from the people.
Get on the phone with these guys. Todd Young just won. He just got to the Senate. Tell him, get these people, because it's hard for him. He's from Indiana, Mike Pence, all that stuff. And there is this institutional respect that none of us on this panel, or none on the most right-wing Republican panel, are going to be able to break through in the Senate, which is this institutional respect, which is the tradition that is very, very hard.
But don't you think that all the Republicans showed no respect for the institution when they did to Merrick Garland what they did? Because they wouldn't even have a meeting with them.
I think that they found a loophole that they all jumped into. And it was so insulting and so hideous and so wrong and all of those things.
Yes.
But I think that they, in their own way, and I'm not even going to say the reasonable among them, because I don't think there was anybody who spoke about it reasonably, but they said, okay, so this is what the Senate says, and this is what we're going to do. You can find an argument for anything if you look at enough Senate precedent, and that's what they're trying to do. It's inexcusable.
Then
It's the worst thing that happened in the past year because of what it means going forward right now. And these senators, listen, I'll take a cabinet full of Ben Carsons as long as these senators stand up for the judicial nominees of Donald Trump, stand up to them.
I think, look, that loophole I thought was ridiculous from the very beginning. Anybody who believes that they had a point doesn't understand the history of how these things go down, but it also lays out a path that the Democrats can take. If 9 months is too close to an election, when he nominates them on Thursday, just say, I think the people should have a say. I'm going to wait till the results of the next presidential election.
Yeah, right.
And by the way, if you think that's ridiculous, you didn't even win the popular vote. So the people didn't get a say on this. The states got a say because we rule by geography, not by population for some reason in this country. So just say, we'll find out in 4 years what the people think.
You know who created journalism you could be proud of? You did. Our audience helped us hire an investigative reporting team. Now we're going to go for a second. tytnetwork.com/go. Let's build the best reporting team in the country together.